What is going on, guys, and welcome to my top 10 never used Pokemon countdown. This will basically be outlining my opinion of the top 10 best Pokemon in the never used tier in today's metagame. I figured this countdown would be pretty appropriate considering I spend most of my time battling in the NU tier. Also, guys, be sure to keep in mind that the Pokemon included in this list may not be NU forever. A lot of the time Pokemon fluctuate tiers and never really stays constant. So also keep in mind that this video will only be including Pokemon that you can find in Smogon's current NU tier list. It will be including nothing in the tiers below, so that may make room for a video later. There are definitely quite a few Pokemon in the PU tier that I find myself using in NU a lot, but today we're just going to be strictly talking about the NU tier. Alright, so let's go ahead and just hop right into it. Coming in at number 10, we have everyone's favorite Butterfly of Death, Vivillon. So not only is this thing extremely cool because it's the number 666 Pokemon in the Pokédex, and because it gets access to a whole bunch of different wing patterns, but this little butterfly mofo is also extremely impressive in the competitive scene. So just by taking a quick look at this thing's stats, the only really thing it has going for it is its speed and its special attack, but honestly that's all this thing needs to steal your girl. Vivillon definitely gets pretty good use out of its ability Compound Eyes, which is probably going to be your primary ability with this guy. Basically it just gives you a 30% increase in accuracy, and it makes moves like Hurricane and Sleep Powder a lot less annoying to use. So the main reason why this thing made it into this list is essentially because of how threatening it can be once it starts setting up. So basically Sleep Powder gives it a decent chance to start setting up some Quiver Dances, and once that happens it is pretty much game over from then on. The easiest way to get this butterfly to sweep like a damn broom is basically to knock out the opponent's special defense wall before sending in this butterfly, and then once that happens you are basically free to just tear up the opponent's team. So Vivillon's main attacking moves provide pretty decent coverage against most things you're going to find in NU. Hurricane takes care of most things, and Bug Buzz is able to break through substitutes, and it's just a decently, powerful stab move there. So although this thing is extremely useful, it definitely does have its downfalls, which is why it's placed at the bottom of the list at number 10 here. The main reason is that it does take 50% from Stealth Rock damage due to its poor typing, which is pretty unfortunate. So you're definitely going to have a pretty situational team built around Vivillon. Definitely going to have some rapid spinners around and stuff like that. Next up at number 9, we have the sumo wrestler Hariyama. So the reason why this fat dude made it into the top 10 is basically because it gets access to two pretty unique strategies that make it pretty damn useful. Looking at this thing's stats, it's very noticeable that this thing has a massive amount of HP that allows it to definitely tank some hits even though its defenses are not the best. Pairing that with an Assault Vest is one of the common sets that people use in Hariyama. This basically allows this thing to tank special attacks all damn day, while also being able to dish out some decent damage with that massive attack. Although that set does pair well with teams that could use some more defensive bulk, my preferred strategy with Hariyama is to take advantage of its ability Guts. Once this dude gets a status condition like a burn or a poison, its already very high attack gets skyrocketed to the point where this thing hits like a motherfucking truck. So I usually like to run the Fake Out Flame Orb sets. With this set you usually just go for the Fake Out on the first turn, which then activates your Flame Orb, which is then going to make your attack beastly because that Guts boost is now active. So at this point you're able to basically take advantage of Hariyama's extensive kind of coverage. It does have a lot of options with movesets, and a lot of the time I do like to play around with different movesets, but basically I tend to use the knockoff kind of close combat Ice Punch Fake Out sort of combo because it does take care of a lot of Eviolite Pokemon like that with a knockoff, and it's able to hit ghost types and stuff like that. And then close combat and Ice Punch are pretty self-explanatory. This Hariyama moveset can also be a pretty impressive wall breaker. It basically nothing wants to take a close combat from a Guts Hariyama, I'll tell you that much. Coming in at number 8, we have the Ghost with the Sweet Hat, Mismagius. So this guy made it into the top 10 simply because of these amazing stats. Check that out. It's got base 105 special attack, base 105 special defense, and then 105 speed, which makes it very versatile when considering you can build this thing a couple different ways, kind of like Hariyama. I like Pokemon that you can have a couple different options in building. The first useful strategy is a support defensive Mismagius, which gains access to moves like Taunt, Destiny Bond, Pain Split, Will-O-Wisp, and things like that that make it a pain in the ass to kill. Even though this thing's physical defense is not that great, it does get a little bit of support from the Will-O-Wisp. Burning physical attackers is pretty awesome. And also, Taunt definitely works out for stopping setups and stealth rocks and stuff like that. My current favorite Mismagius set is actually a substitute Nasty Plot set with coverage moves of Shadow Ball and Thunderbolts. Considering a lot of people expect this thing to be defensive, it's actually really easy to get up a free substitute and then be able to sweep with some Nasty Plot action. Thanks to Mismagius' very decent speed, it's actually quite nice because you're actually able to outspeed a lot of stuff and then hit really hard with a +2 special attack from that Nasty Plot. Overall, Mismagius is a pretty impressive Pokemon when considering it's in the never used tier. Like, who never uses this thing? I've been destroying shit with this thing since 4th generation. Next up at number 7, we have arguably the best never used flying type, Swellow. So, Swellow's a Pokemon that if it's used correctly can be one of the most dangerous late game sweepers. Even outside of the NU tier, it can even destroy stuff in underused and everything. But, so basically the first thing you notice about this Pokemon is that it has very good speed, very good attack, and its ability, it actually has 2 abilities that can be very useful. It has Guts like we saw in Hariyama, and it also has Scrappy, which allows you to hit Ghost type Pokemon with normal type moves. Which is nice because Swellow does have the normal typing, so he does get the same type attack bonus on normal type moves. So I usually tend to gravitate towards the physical attacking Swellow just because it gets access to Facade and Guts and it comes in handy a lot better, but the Scrappy special attacking one is actually not too bad. It gets access to Boom Burst, which is pretty nice, nice little stab special attack there, and a lot of the times you can catch physically defensive Pokemon off guard with some special attacks, and that's pretty nice. So moving along to the physical attacking Guts Swellow. So this is actually the main reason why this Swellow got into the top 10 is because it hits so hard with a Guts boosted Brave Bird, and Facade does a lot of damage to most things, and you can actually outspeed just about anything you really want to, honestly, in the NU tier at least. And usually if you're able to save Swellow in your back pocket until the very, half end of the match, you can usually get some pretty awesome late game sweeps with this bad boy. Coming in at number 6, we have this beast of a fire type, Pyroar. So this majestic ass lion is without a doubt one of the most threatening special attackers in the NU tier. It actually has a pretty unique typing. It gets fire normal, so it has access to a same type attack bonus on Hyper Voice, which is really cool. And if you throw a choice specs on this thing, it will demolish pretty much anything in its path. This thing also gets access to 3 different abilities, which are all pretty useful in their own way. One of the best things about Pyroar is that it hits extremely hard with Hyper Voice due to the stab, and it breaks through substitutes, which is really helpful in some situations. And if you throw a choice specs on this thing, you don't even need to be hitting no grass types with fire moves, because that thing will just get destroyed anyways. Another thing that's really great about Pyroar is that Flamethrower, Overheat, and Fire Blast all hit extremely hard even on Pokemon that would resist it, and since you have so much speed, 2-hit KOs are always in the question. This thing's definitely just one of those Pokemon that has extremely hyper offense that can just tear things apart without even trying. Next up at number 5, we have probably the scariest flower out there, Vileplume. So, by looking at this thing's stats, you probably wouldn't be able to tell, but it's one of the most effective defensive walls in the NU tier, due to, mainly because it's typing, it gets Grass and Poison, which is extremely useful in NU, and it actually still has a decent amount of special attack to hit pretty hard without any investment. It has the ability Effect Spore, which comes in handy more so than Chlorophyll, usually, unless you're running a Sweeper Vileplume. I tend to run Effect Spore because if people make contact with you, they're going to usually regret it. So Vileplume made it at number 5 simply because it has access to a lot of moves and it's able to tank hits extremely effectively. It takes no damage from that crunch from this Granbull. The Effect Spore comes in and it actually has access to Sleep Powder, which is really nice. It has access to a recovery move in Synthesis, and it overall has really extremely good advantages against a lot of the Pokemon in NU. Giga Drain comes in handy a lot because you can get a lot of HP back, and overall this thing's just an absolute monster of a flower. Coming in at number 4, we have another very defensive, weird-looking grass type, Cradily. So, something about Cradilly's weirdness in looks made me want to put it later in the countdown than Vileplume, but there is actually a pretty logical reason. If you take one quick glance at this thing's stats, you'll notice that it has very good defenses. This thing, the main reason why it is number 4 in the countdown is because of the fact that this can either be ran as a physically defensive Pokemon or a specially defensive Pokemon. If you're going to go the specially defensive route, it's probably going to be a little bit more beneficial, but honestly, running a physical defense while Cradily actually also definitely comes in handy because you kind of keep the opponent guessing, and to me that's really cool. Cradily is probably one of the best walls in NU, considering it works well as a lead because it does get access to Stealth Rocks. The Grass and Rock typing makes it very good in the NU tier for coverage. It has access to Storm Drain, which actually provides very good coverage for when you have a weakness to water attacks. You can send this guy in, he gets in a special attack boost, and he can definitely use that to his advantage. And Cradily can just be a pain in the ass because he definitely has a lot of options. Moveset wise, you can have a stockpile one with just insanely high defenses after 1 or 2 stockpiles. It likes to take advantage of Toxic, and overall this thing is just badass. So even though I do have both types of Cradily, a physical defense wall and a special wall, I do find myself using the specially defensive one quite a bit because it takes super effective attacks like it's absolutely nothing, and it has a decent amount of impact on a battle considering Toxic does quite a bit. And the main thing about this guy is it actually has access to recovery, which is pretty crucial in keeping this thing healthy throughout a match. So yeah, Cradily found himself in this point in the countdown basically because whenever I'm in an NU match and bring this guy, he always turns out to be one of my MVPs for sure. He definitely just carries his weight, and he's definitely one of the best defensive Pokemon in the tier. Also, never be afraid to use this thing in tiers like underused and overused. It definitely still puts in work, no matter if it's in NU or not. Next up at number 3, we have the Upside Down Squid, Malamar. So honestly, one of the main reasons why this thing made it all the way to number 3 in the countdown is because this thing is awesome. I really like the design. The concept of this Pokemon is extremely cool, and it also has some pretty damn good stats to help with that in competitive. And one of the main strategies behind this thing is going ahead and taking advantage of that contrary ability, which reverses stat changes. So this thing really is able to spam superpowers and just become an absolute offensive and defensive beast. So this thing's main strategy is to take advantage of superpowers' secondary effects. It basically normally would lower your attack and defense by 1 stage, but since Malamar's ability is contrary, it actually raises its attack 1 stage and its defense, which is pretty damn awesome. So Malamar in Wi-Fi battles can be extremely effective if used properly. If you can save it to the point in the battle where you don't have many special attacking threats on the other side, you can basically just spam superpower to the point where Malamar's physical defense would be extremely large, and you can also use Psycho Cut for that stab psychic move. Superpower is extremely useful against a lot of Pokemon. Basically, after you get 1 or 2 of these babies up, this thing's attack is just extremely scary, and Malamar can't really be touched by physical attacks. Coming in at the number 2 spot, we have my good buddy, Quagsire. Swagsire's a blue blob that is honestly really difficult to not just love. This thing is extremely awesome and it's really helpful in competitive Wi-Fi. So at first glance, you do notice that its HP and physical defense are mainly what you're going to be using this Pokemon for. Game Freak was incredibly kind to this thing in actually hooking it up with 2 really useful abilities, Water Absorb and Unaware. Unaware is probably going to be your primary ability with Quagsire, considering it really helps for stopping sweeps on the opponent's side, and Water Absorb is actually rather helpful too, because if you do have a water weakness, you can definitely take advantage of that. So I usually tend to use the Unaware ability on Quagsire because, as shown in this example, it actually does really help to be a wall against physical attackers that are setting up on you. So basically, you do not acknowledge the fact that this thing wants more attack. Quagsire's like, I don't even give a shit, bro. So when he does eventually hit you with an attack, it will not do a damn thing. Basically, Quagsire can sit in here all day, toxic things, wait for that damage to take its effect, and it also has access to Recover, which is extremely helpful. Another very cool thing about Quagsire is that since it does have 2 common abilities, opponents don't really know which one you're running until they try to hit you with a water attack, and it's pretty nice to keep the opponents guessing. I'd also like to mention that its special attack and attack are rather decent, so you can have coverage moves of Scald and Earthquake, which definitely come in handy. And finally, at the number 1 spot, we have my favorite NU pile of sludge, Muck. So, Muck has earned the #1 spot in today's countdown simply because this thing is a phenomenal special defense wall. Personally, looking at this thing's stats, I really like that it has very high attack, very high HP, and special defense. I usually prefer to run walls that can actually hit hard as well. This is what you call a tank Pokemon. It can take hits, and it can also dish out a lot of damage. Muck takes the #1 spot because a lot of people, I feel, sleep on this thing. Honestly, I use this a lot. It's one of my go-to special defense walls. It does a lot of damage with a stab, poison jab. It can gain access to gunk shots. It has a lot of coverage moves, and its ability Poison Touch actually really comes in handy considering making contact with a Pokemon increases the chances of it getting poisoned. You can even poison things with moves that wouldn't normally even poison things because, hey, who wants to get touched by Muck? That would suck. Also, even though Muck does have pretty unimpressive physical defense, all you gotta do is start setting up some curses. It'll raise your attack to very high levels, and it'll also make your defense to the point where you can definitely take a lot of physical attacks. So, although Muck does have a lot of coverage moves, I generally tend to run Curse, Poison Jab, Shadow Sneak, and Ice Punch. I feel like that works out very well. If you can start setting up some curses, this thing becomes a nightmare. And the Poison Touch definitely is pretty awesome when it happens. And as you can see there, taking an Earthquake from a Torterra, Ice Punch for coverage on grass and ground types like that, and that is awesome. Another thing that makes this thing so unique is that it actually gains access to a priority move called Shadow Sneak, which is awesome for being able to catch a lot of Pokemon off guard. So guys, those are my top 10 NU Pokemon. I really hope you enjoyed the video. I will maybe be making more of these in the future if I get some support on this video. If I get smashed 3,000 likes, that would be insane, and I would love you guys forever. But anyways, I will catch you guys next time. See you later.